How you doing? My name is Pablo and today we are gonna talk about the new release from VALNETINO, and in this case it's gonna be with the same line as all of the BORN in Roma. And we have a flanker from the original and it's gonna be the intense version, so in this case it's BORN in Roma Intense. Previously, we have gotten a lot of flankers from the BORN in Roma. We have the Yellow Dream, we have the Coral Fantasy, and now we have the Intense version. We are not gonna go in depth with the OG version, but we are gonna make a little bit of comparison at the end of the video. We all know that BORN in Roma, it's a fragrance that is for young people, right? They are mostly based on almost every note that it's gonna be almost sweet. Since that's the DNA of the fragrance, make a fragrance that is gonna be sweet for young people. You're gonna go to the club, you're gonna go to a date, and even you can use it on your everyday use. But we may have a problem with the original, and it's a fragrance that it's almost for the young people and not so much for the old ones. But lately we got the flanker Coral Fantasy, that's a fragrance that it has tobacco and as well some apple in it, so it's a fragrance that almost an old person can use. But indeed it still have the BORN in Roma DNA that it's gonna be a lot of sweet fragrance. But now we have the intense version that is indeed intense, so what if we get started? The box is gonna be the same box that we always have gotten in the Uomo. All black with the VALNETINO logo in pink, and as well in this version we have the Intense down below. On the top you have pretty much nothing, as well on the sides. In the back you're gonna get your code, and on the bottom you have your batch code. And once you open the box you have this code that says that you can get some rewards at valnetino.com. But here's the more interesting thing, and it's gonna be the fragrance itself. The bottle is gonna be the same silhouette, you still have these spikes on the bottle itself. And as well you have this almost leather type, but it's kind of like a sticker in pink that says VALNETINO. But the thing that's gonna be more curious is the fact that if you put it against light, the color of the fragrance itself is gonna be a lot of pink, almost like neon pink, and it does make reference from the original pink from VALNETINO, so you can expect that from this liquid. And the cap is gonna be the new design of the caps, that it's a cap not like the old version, that the old version is a pin that you have to evade from spraying. But now let's go to the most interesting part of the fragrance, and it's gonna be the smell itself. From the beginning, at the first glance you can tell that it's a fragrance that it's almost the same as the OG. Since it smells almost the same, you can expect that the fragrance have a lot of common notes, and in this case you will be surprised because they don't share a lot of notes. The note that is gonna be common, it's gonna be ginger. Ginger, it gives you this type of fragrance that is gonna be almost fresh, but not too fresh that you wouldn't use it on the winter. Well, in this case you have it, but the main difference is that now we have vanilla as one of the main notes, but don't expect to be like a lot of vanilla. To be honest, it's something that is gonna be under the table. You can still smell it, but it's not gonna be like really loud, so don't expect to be the vanilla like really loud. Besides that, we have the main note of the fragrance, and it's gonna be lavender. Lavender, we can expect the same lavender that Coral Fantasy have. That is a lavender that it's almost like pretty goddamn sweet, but it doesn't smell any synthetic. So the fragrance, besides it's sweet, you can expect something to be pretty goddamn natural, so don't expect to be like almost like a Mont Blanc fragrance that is gonna be synthetic all the way. In this case, it doesn't happen. To finish it all up with nutmeg and as well as some vetiver to make the fragrance a little bit dry and as well a little bit woody. The nutmeg, the main thing that it's gonna do is make the fragrance a little bit dry. When you eat dry nuts, you can expect your mouth to go almost dry. I mean, that's the main thing about dry nuts, and in this case it's gonna be exactly the same thing. It's gonna give the fragrance a little bit of a dry feeling to it, and the vetiver is gonna act like woody notes, almost giving you this kind of dark woody notes on the fragrance itself. It can almost remind you a lot of the Coral Fantasy tobacco. The vibe of the fragrance is almost the same fragrance. I'll be honest to you, you smell it and it's gonna be a fragrance that you're gonna use in the club, you're gonna use it in a date, and you're gonna use it for wherever you wanna draw a lot of attention. The fragrance is gonna be your best shoulder to make that choice. So if you still love the original DNA from BORN in Roma, I'm gonna tell you something, and it's a fragrance that it is not not going to disappoint you. If you love the OG, you're gonna love this one. If you love Coral Fantasy, you're gonna love this one. And if you love Yellow Dream, it's a lot different. But if you don't like the original or either the Coral Fantasy, I will tell you that it's a fragrance that you're probably not gonna like because it's based on the same things. This almost kind of syrup that is gonna be sweet. Well, this has it as well, so you can still spec that. If we're talking about the public of the fragrance, I can tell you that it's a fragrance that is born in Roma, only young people can use it, but I'll be honest to you, it isn't. Since it's a perfect mix between the Coral Fantasy and the OG, I can tell you there's a fragrance that almost everyone can use it, so you can expect every age range to use it. For a 15 years old to a 60 years old person even, it can use it, so it's a fragrance that, don't be alarmed, the smell is gonna be pretty much the same, but you have to have this in mind, and it's a fragrance that it's gonna smell a lot of sweet, almost like syrup. The occasion of the fragrance, it's gonna be simple, right? We are based on the old versions like OG, Coral Fantasy, and we know that those fragrances are more of like for clubbing, night outs. Well, in this case, is exactly the same. It's a fragrance that for the club, date, night out is a fragrance that you're gonna use it indeed. The temperature is gonna be a fragrance that you're gonna use it almost on all winter. You can either use it as well on the heat, but in the night. If you use it on the day in heat, you might get a little bit dizzy, so I can tell you that from experience. Since the fragrance straight up, the smell is a lot heavy, so it's gonna be a dense fragrance that you smell it and it's gonna fulfill your nose from one sniff. But here comes the great part, the performance itself of the fragrance. We know the OG version is a fragrance that it's gonna do pretty goddamn good. It's not the best, it's not the worst. It's a fragrance that it's gonna be defending itself like all times. Coral Fantasy, in the other hand, is a fragrance that it does have a great performance, meaning wise that it's gonna fragrance that it's gonna last, but it cannot be projecting. But the new release is a fragrance that, you know what, it has a lot of performance. If we're talking about exactly durability, I can tell you that it's a fragrance that's gonna last you between 8 to 10 hours, and that's gonna be like for the rest of the fragrance that you use it. But if you're using it to draw a lot of attention, let me tell you something, and it's a fragrance that is gonna be almost like one-to-one encounters. You're going to a date, you're going to a party, you're gonna meet something. Well, this fragrance is gonna work a lot great because between the first and the second hour, the fragrance is gonna be almost a beast mode. But between the third and plus hours, I can tell you that the fragrance is not gonna be almost like a lot of consistency, since you're gonna smell it, then you're not, then you're yes, and then not. So you can still spec this from this case. And the other thing that's gonna be most important of all times is gonna be compliments, right? I use fragrance for compliments, you use fragrance for compliments, everyone starts using fragrance to get compliments. And now this fragrance is gonna get you a lot of compliments. The Coral Fantasy does give you a lot of compliments, and the OG version, it can vary from the people. But in this case, since it smells a lot sweet, almost like candy type of fragrance, I can assure you that it's a fragrance that you're indeed gonna get a lot of compliments. If we talk about quality itself of the smell of the fragrance, you can still spec the same quality as the previous versions. It's not gonna be the high-end quality, but it's not gonna be the worst one. So it's a fragrance that it's designer, so you can expect that designer quality on it. But here comes the real question, right? If I already own this, can I get this or should I? Well, let's find out. We all know VALNETINO Born in Roma, the OG version, is a fragrance that it has been in the market for a lot of years now, and it is still relevant nowadays. Since it's a fragrance that people still buying, but now what about the intense version? I'll be honest, if you already own the OG version, I truly would recommend you to get the intense version, since indeed it is more intense. So if you love the original OG DNA that the original has, well, you're still gonna have it in here. The main difference is that it's gonna last you a lot, and the smell itself is pretty much almost the same. The main difference is now that it's gonna be like more friendly for everyone to use, this meaning to be a lot like powdery and syrup at the same time. This one is gonna get you a lot of more performance. If you're looking for that, well, let me tell you that this one is gonna get it, and compliments in this one is far way better. But if you already own the Coral Fantasy, I would tell you, you know what, you should get it as well. It's a fragrance that this one has tobacco, woody notes, apple, and the same lavender. Since this one does have woody notes itself, you're gonna expect this one to be a little bit more darker and a little bit less sweeter. And here's the big deal, if you mix the Coral Fantasy with the OG version, you're gonna get the intense. The intense is a mix between the Coral Fantasy and the OG, so if you love both, I can assure you that you're gonna love the new intense fragrance. So if you wanna check out or even try out any of the fragrances that I have behind me, you can do it so in the link below, that is the Canto Perfumes. We do ship to the US so you can get your fragrances. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed. Please make sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and my other Spanish YouTube channel. So smell you later.